Ladies and gentlemen, this episode of Two Peas on a Podcast is brought to you by the voices inside of my head. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new episode of Two Peas on a Podcast. Gerald here with you, where we review the latest and sometimes greatest movies every week. Nick is still on, I guess, vacation, hiatus, whatever you want to call it. He will be back sometime in July. I'm looking forward to having that dude back on here with me so I can hear just to tell him how wrong he is. It's a full-time job. So this week I got somebody in here, a delight to join me, my fellow North Carolina film critic, also the host and creator of one of my stories, Miss Lindsay Dunn, who's been on the show before, but it's been quite a while. Lindsay, how are you?
I'm good, Gerald. Nick, your loss is my gain because I get to talk with my buddy tonight.
That's right. That's right. We go way back. And when I knew I had to get some guests on in, several weeks back to back, I was like, let me see what Lindsay's doing. Let's see what movie I want to talk to her about. And I know you got to go see this early, right? Like you saw the premiere or the critic screening for this, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
I
I
wasn't
saw.
gonna be able to go, but then when you said we could do a podcast, I was like, all right, I can put something out because I was like, I'm doing Tribeca, so writing is not gonna happen.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, so we'll do this tonight. We'll hopefully do justice to Inside Out 2 as the main review this week. And we'll be discussing that movie. Before we get there, though, Lindsay, we like to start out every episode. I gave you a little bit of homework because I want you to pick a question out of the Facebook fan group. But we start out every review with what we call one big question. All right. Lindsay, did you want to pick one out of the Facebook group first, or do you want me to pick mine first? I got one from our Discord chat here that I was going to throw out at you.
Oh, you can go first.
All right. So Brett from Dissect That Film, patron and friend of the show. Brett, we love you, buddy. He says, should they make an Inside Out 3 where Riley is an adult? Now, don't give away too much about your review of Inside Out 2, but what would be your answer there? Would you like to see an Inside Out 3?
Well, I don't know. They kind of left. I feel like they left room for that possibility with the movie, with some of the things that happened during the movie, which we can't talk about yet. But they're definitely trying to age Riley up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that part of the appeal of the first one is the connection to childhood. So you gotta tread carefully, continuing on this Riley path.
I'll just tell you and Brett, since he asked, I'm good. I don't need that. I don't hold Inside Out 3. We'll talk a little bit about obviously we'll break down the movie when we get into the review, but just the whole sequel and retreading and everything, I'm good. I don't need that. I think, Pixar does that really cute thing where they do those like shorts and they'll put them on Disney Plus or they'll premiere before another movie or whatever. That might be cool. They did one. They actually did one called Riley's First Date after the first movie came out, and it was her like going on a date with somebody. It kind of happened right after the first movie, like in succession or whatever. So something like that, like a 10-minute short, might be okay. But I don't know that I need a full blown movie in the same vein as what we're getting with these. But we'll talk about it when we get there. Did you have one that you wanted to throw out there? We could talk about from the Facebook group.
We had a question from Lauren Smith, which at first that took me aback because I thought, I know a Lauren Smith. This can't be the same Lauren Smith, and it's not. So, but anyway,
okay,
Lauren Smith. I have a good friend with that name too. Which emotion do you resonate with the most on a daily basis? Is the question I'm going to pick. I like a deep question, Gerald.
Oh man. Wow. That really is a good question, actually. Let me try to stick with the emotions that are in the movie. I don't know that I know the answer. Do you know the answer? Do you know your answer to this?
Yeah, I'm gonna say for me, out of the emotions that have shown up so far, now my
Yeah,
top emotion would be tired, and that's that's not one of the
right,
options.
right.
That's not an option we've had brought in yet. But out of the options that were brought in already, I'm gonna say joy
Okay,
overall, because I think I tend sometimes, to my friends' annoyance, to be sort of a glass half full person. And when people are sad, I'm getting better at it, but I used to try to cheer people up or kind of talk them out of being
sure, yeah.
feeling a certain way. And I think that's what her whole trajectory is in this show, is kind of learning learning not to do that. So that's going to be my answer. What about you,
That's a
Gerald?
good one. Well, this is a really tough question, to be honest. I mean, obviously, the idea is that we have all of these at different, points throughout the day and our
Hmm.
lives. But I thought a really cool kind of recurring joke in this movie was nostalgia.
Hmm.
And I think as I'm approaching, I'll be 50 next year, so I'm starting to have quite a bit of nostalgia. like I feel like on a daily basis, I see something, whether it's an advertisement or something in a grocery store or whatever, that just kind of gives me nostalgia, and also the nostalgic feelings of like my kids doing things that I used to do. Like baseball right now is huge in our house, and it just all feels very warm and fuzzy from a nostalgic perspective. So I'll say nostalgia just
Hmm.
because I do feel that all the time. Although anxiety is a big one too. Like, you
Hmm.
want to succeed, you want to take care of your family. There's a lot of anxiety around that, but nostalgia will be my answer, which I thought
Hmm.
was honestly one of my favorite parts of Inside Out 2 was when that kind of recurring joke would show up in the movie. I thought it was cute. Voiced by June Squibb, 94
Hmm.
year old June Squibb. So that would be my answer. So thank you guys for the questions this week in one big question. Now, Lindsay, we have to talk about Inside Out 2, and we're going to keep it spoiler free for the first few minutes. And as you know, here on Two Ps, when Nick's here, I'm doing it with the guests too. I'm putting you on the spot. But we are going to give our score out of 10 to each other, and we've not discussed it yet. And it's
Hmm.
what we call the early score reveal.
Hmm.
All right, so I will count us in, and then we can show our score on camera and go ahead and say it for the audio audience as well. All right, you ready?
Hmm.
All right, three, two, one.
5.
Oh, and you know this is out of 10, yeah?
Yep.
All right, five from Lindsay, and a and a seven for me. So 7 and a 5 gives us a 6 overall,
Hmm.
cumulatively from the piece. On Inside Out 2, it's funny. This is going to be spoiler free for just a few minutes here, Lindsay.
Hmm.
It's funny because when I kind of landed on a 7, I thought to myself, I'm probably going to get chastised for not liking this enough because I've seen people are just in love with it. I mean, it's a good movie. I really enjoy it. I don't like it nearly as much as the first film. I
Hmm.
feel like I think my biggest problem with it, and I do like the movie, I do recommend it, but I think my biggest problem with it is that it's the first movie with a few new characters added to it,
Hmm.
and it just didn't carry the emotional heft that the first film did for me. I kind
Right.
of want to hear what you think of the original too, because I'm not quite sure where you stand on that. But go ahead and give your general thoughts without spoiling anything as to why you gave it a 5.
I think you kind of nailed it. All the things you said. Just it the conceptually, the movie has a lot going for it, and I thought that the kind of overall things it's trying to communicate and say about the human experience are actually really true. And I appreciated that they brought in the nuance,
Hmm.
but there was almost just too much going on
Hmm.
overall.
Yeah, it was a very. I agree. I agree. This isn't really going to spoil anything, but I mean, it was a very fast-paced, breakneck story until it would like stop and try to give you those moments of levity and tenderness to make you cry or, and I'm not saying they weren't emotional,
Mhm.
especially if somebody's of a certain age or demographic, it might connect with a little bit more than I did, but it was just hard for me to connect to it because of
Right.
how fast paced everything was leading up to those quieter moments. Do you know what I mean? I
Hmm.
was almost like you had to kind of catch your breath. Whereas in the first movie, it was paced much better, I thought, and it was more consistent, and it gave you a lot more time to kind of breathe in those moments of emotion that I thought this movie was kind of lacking in that respect. My kids loved it, both of them. My 10-year-old and my 5-year-old loved it. I think it's a great family film. I think Disney Pixar, has a reputation for kind of knowing what they're doing when it comes to properties that are established, and I think that's why this movie's making so much money because it's an established property. But that first movie just felt so original. You know what I mean? It just felt so. It was like when I saw Monsters Inc. or The Incredibles for the first time. Like it's just, and I'm not saying those sequels were bad either. It's just like it's not Pixar's fault. It's not the movie's fault or anything. It's just that originality is no longer original. Now we're trying to you know, do something else with it or throw some kind of curveball into the mix. What did you think about the first film before we get into the spoiler side of the discussion?
I'm one of those people I didn't see. I saw the movie definitely, and I remember loving it and thinking, like you said, that it was very original. That it really kind of hit that line of being funny, but also really emotional and heartfelt, and you really got involved in the story. And
Mm-hmm.
I think there's beauty in simplicity, and in some ways the movie is really simple. The same thing happened. I'm rewatching Cobra Kai in anticipation of the new season coming out,
Yeah.
and I just watched season 1, and in my mind I was thinking, oh, this is probably gonna be so boring. But I was like, wow, this is almost a perfect season storytelling wise. It
Mm-hmm.
just sets everything up and keeps it simple, and there's beauty in that. And I feel like that's what the first movie did. Like the few characters it had worked really well, and that gave it that time to breathe that I think you're kind of talking about, that you need you need like times to breathe, as well as like lots of plot and stuff happens. There's got to be those moments where you kind of let the audience rest and sit in something for a bit, and you have to find
Mm-hmm.
that beautiful balance. So when you start talking about sequels, it's really hard to not just repeat stuff. You have to do something original with it, or bring in something new to the story that's important enough to say that makes it entertaining.
Yeah, I agree. I agree for the most part, for sure. All right, let's take a quick promo break, Lindsay, so that we can get everybody their spoiler warning. Guys, when we come back on the flip side of this break, we will be into spoilers for Inside Out 2. So if you've not seen that movie yet, make sure you come back after you see the film to listen to the rest of the episode. We will be right back with Miss Lindsay Dunn. Sit tight. All right. Something I was going to say in rebuttal to you, but I forget what it is now, of course. All right.
Rebuttal. If you're gonna rebut on
Response.
screen,
I'm
buddy.
sorry. I'm sorry. Response. Sorry. All right. Coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We are discussing Inside Out 2. I got my dear friend Lindsay Dunn here from One of My Stories. Make sure you check her out. We will talk about that at the end of the episode, so you can find all her information in the show notes. So, I asked Lindsay to come on the show to talk about Inside Out 2, and she might be the only person that likes this movie less than I do, based on the score. I didn't know that was going to happen, but here we are. So, we're into spoilers. You can say anything you want to say, Lindsay. Where when you were watching this, okay,
Mhm.
where did it hit you that I don't think I like this as much as I? What would you give the first movie off the top of your head out of 10?
Well, first of all, 5 isn't that bad of a score. So, yeah, it's like, I mean, it's 50%. So, it's not
Yeah.
like I hated this movie, but do I think it's a solid movie that I think you have to see in the theaters? Probably not, unless you have
Okay.
kids and it's like, those people that really need a family movie to go see right now.
Hmm.
But I don't think it's a must see in the theater kind of experience. It's good, but I wouldn't say I didn't like it. I was laughing, having a good time, but I wasn't emotionally invested
Yeah.
and coming away with, wow, that was really great, such a great time and such a great lesson. I mean, I thought I had a good lesson, but that can also be like, if you have if the lesson hits too hard, that
Yeah.
can sort of be less entertaining. um
Right.
but I mean, there are some things that really worked well for me, and I'm happy to talk about those. But yeah, so
Yeah.
what are your thoughts about what I
Well, I want
said?
to hear. I want to hear that. I guess what I'll say. I mean, I already kind of told everyone in the spoiler free section that just the pacing, I didn't. It just kind of wore me out a little bit, for lack of a better way to put it. And also, I felt like it was a rehash of the first movie without the emotional weight to it that the first film had for me personally. The
Mhm.
originality missing because it's a sequel. I also am an old man shaking my fist at a cloud lately when it comes to like the lack of original ideas and sequels
Mhm.
and kind of taking over the landscape. And like you said, I mean, this is a good movie. I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying don't see this. I mean, I think it's a good film. I think it's probably mid tier in terms of Pixar's rankings or whatever in the 25 or whatever films they've done, feature films. But the things that I loved about it were the voice acting. I think the voice acting in this series in general is always top tier, led by Amy Poehler. But we got Maya Hawke introduced here
Mhm.
as Anxiety. She was great. Um, so I really love, and Iowa Debris shows up in this
Mhm.
installment as well, and I'm a big fan of hers as of late. So I love the voice acting. The animation is. I didn't see because I rewatched the original before I went to see the sequel in the theater,
Mhm.
and I will say I didn't see a ton of like advancements in the animation, which kind of surprised me. Like it looked basically the same as it looked 5 years ago in terms of animation, which was I don't know. I was expecting it to be a little more crisp or I don't know, but it was like the same. It was like they filmed them at the same time and just put out number two now. I mean that's kind of what it
Mhm.
looked like. Um,
Was the like, I noticed with the animation, when you got really close to like sadness, especially, there was sort of those fuzzy edges. So was that part of the original movie? Because I don't remember that being established as much as it was in this movie, that they kind of showed.
I do feel like it was a little more enhanced in this film. You're right, but I do
Mhm.
think that was always a thing, though. I didn't. In other words, when I saw it, I didn't go, "Oh, what's that? That's new." Of course, I don't know, but off the top of my head, I would say that that's something that she always kind of had, like her aura or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it was a little more like defined in this movie. I do agree with you there. What are some of the things that you really enjoyed about it? Because you said you and I are tight, so we're just talking here. But you said five's not a bad score. If I gave a movie a five, for me, so my passing
Mhm.
for me on my scoring is a six. If I give
Mhm.
something less than a six, I'm not recommending the movie.
Hmm.
Although there's might be things I liked about it or performances or soundtrack or whatever, but I'm saying skip it basically if I don't give it at least a six. So I'm
Mhm.
curious to hear how you kind of weighed that. Like we kind of talked already about some of our dislikes, but what's some of the things that you really enjoyed about this movie?
Mhm. Well, let me respond first to the number thing, because I'm used to doing letterboxed, right? So a
Yeah.
5 is like a 2.5 in the letterbox world.
Hmm.
And a 3 for me, that means like, yeah, a good movie. Go see it. I'm recommending it. 2.5 is just a little bit less than that. So it's less than ideal, but it's still not this isn't good at all. I guess for me that would be a 2. So if I gave it like a 4, then that
Yeah.
would be like, so it's sort of borderline, but that's neither here nor there. I think the things I really liked were Maya Hawke, as you mentioned, as anxiety, her character, and the fact I feel like just in general there needs to be more movies about anxiety. And this
Hmm.
is a way that it's being put out that's approachable to kids. Now, is it I guess one of the questions I have, and I know I don't remember what age your kids are now, even though you just said it. But it's like, what is the cutoff for this movie? Like, what age would you say you would recommend it for? Because I was thinking, for me, I was thinking like tween, so like maybe 10 would be the lowest age. But what are your thoughts about that?
That's actually a great question, and that is something I kind of thought about when I was talking to Logan about it. My 10-year-old, he's 10, going on
Mhm.
11, and then I have a 5-year-old who also went to see it with us. He has, not to air out all his crap on the episode, but I mean, he's going through stuff. He has social anxiety a lot of times, so he's already experiencing a lot of those things as a 10-year-old. He's going to be going into fifth grade this upcoming school year. So I can kind of remember some of that stuff being confusing for me at that age too. So I think you're right. I think 10 or 11 and above is probably where it's going to like resonate with the viewer. But with that being said, my 5-year-old who doesn't even know what the word anxiety means freaking loved this movie. Like he had a
Mhm.
blast with it too, and he loves the original. And like, I think those kind of simplistic emotions like joy and sadness that were so powerful in the first film,
Mhm.
anybody really knows what joy and sadness are. Those are like your kind of basic standard, black and white emotions that live inside of you from day one. But then you start to introduce, like, I mentioned nostalgia at the top of the episode, and you start to introduce anxiety. And I think it does need to be a 10, 11-year old or above to like really get the content. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That'd be my opinion. And I think my 10-year-old did take something away from it.
Yeah. So I think in general, like the idea that there was anxiety as a character that people could see and how that might play out, I think that's a really important thing to for movies to start doing. So I was glad about that.
Yeah.
What else worked for me? The whole sequence when they go to the dungeon or whatever with the
Yeah.
you mentioned the different animation styles and how it didn't really elevate. And I'm wondering if they were concerned about falling into the trap of like, oh, every movie now has to be like Spider-Man. So we're going to make like all this fantastic animation. So rather than do that fully throughout the movie, they kind of put it in one section.
Hmm.
And I really thought that was, oh, that part made me crack up, even though I'm not familiar with, like I saw that one of the Flashblade character, like that's supposed to be similar to a character in Final Fantasy. I've never played that game, but I've seen
Yeah,
enough
that was
stuff
funny.
to understand like kind of what they were going for. So I thought that was like a really clever way to kind of bring in different animation styles but not try to do it in the whole thing. So that was just funny. And then apparently apparently I missed the after credits sequence because the credits were so long and I really had to pee. And then I left and Molly told me that oh, there was an after credit sequence with the dark secret, and that I
Yeah, but
totally missed.
I didn't hear what he said, so I was hoping you saw it. So, did she tell you what he said or no, Molly?
Yeah, he told her a secret, but it was a really there was a secret, but that was
It
revealed,
was
but it was
super
a
lame.
lame secret. It wasn't anything. I thought it was going to set up maybe the sequel for the
Y-
next one.
Yeah, yeah. It was it was like a really distorted voice, and me and my wife were like, "What did he say?" We waited for we don't even know what he said. But I think what we came to the conclusion is that like he burned a hole in the rug, or she burned a hole in the rug, or something like that,
Oh, that's funny.
and that was the
That's
deep dark secret. So
yeah.
like, yeah, which is not necessarily a deep dark secret. I don't know. You need to
Mhm.
refer to it like that. What about Pouchy? Did you like Pouchy, the hand drawn was fanny pack or whatever? That was kind of cute.
Yeah, it was annoying, but it was supposed to be.
Yeah, yeah. But that was
um,
cute because that was a bit of a spin on like Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, which plays in this house all the time when my kids were younger.
mm,
Where Mickey Mouse will be like, "All right, let's solve the puzzle," and he'll give you like three things that you know. And it's
yeah.
funny because as a 2-year-old, I mean, you might actually struggle to pick out like, "Oh, I need a hammer to hit this nail, not a paper clip or a flower." You know what I mean? But it was funny to see it on the level that they put it at in the movie, where us as adults are watching it, and I think parents would really get a kick out of Pouchy too. I thought that was a good kind of side character that they added to this installment. Um, what about any scenes? Now, the first movie, let me just say real quick, the Bing Bong sing in the first movie, the imaginary friend that vanishes. I mean, I just I just rewatched it. Like, I'm still
Mhm.
crying at that scene. Like I don't know what's
Mhm.
wrong with me. Like I've seen it like 10 times, and I'm like still crying. Like I know
Yeah.
it's gonna happen. You know, it's just really, it really devotes the time to get that emotion out of the viewer. You know, with the connection with that character and the Riley is aging up, and it just is the whole thing. And especially if you're a parent, it just I don't know, just hits. You know, in this movie, I don't think there was anything even close to the Bing Bong level in this movie. But what were your favorite scenes, or did any scenes kind of grab you more so than others, or characters for that matter that you
Yeah.
may have connected to?
Yeah, I think the scene one of the characters I really liked the best was Embarrassment, and I didn't even know it was, voiced by Paul Walter Hauser, which is funny because he mainly makes little, like, little noises like that, and
Yeah,
it's
he doesn't
like, "Oh,
really talk. Yeah,
this is the equivalent of, Groot." It's kinda like in
yeah,
this where the person's hardly talking, but it's like, "Oh, how great is it this Paul Walter Hauser?" And I really do want the embarrassment there's an embarrassment plushie apparently, so I'm kind of
oh,
really wanting that. But I liked his character and that the scene he had with Sadness is what I think for me, the character I have the most emotional resonance with is Sadness, but it might be also because she was in many ways one of the main characters of the first movie is, Joy wanted to eliminate sadness. And so
hmm,
in this movie, there was a cute scene between Joy and Sadness where she's like, "Where you go, I go." And it kind of was a little nod to the first movie and how their relationship has improved. But then
right,
later you have Sadness and Embarrassment kind of bonding
hmm,
and him turning around to be like to side with her instead of siding with anxiety. So that part made me like not well up exactly, but I thought, "Oh, that's really sweet. That's and kind of meaningful because they are in many ways the sad stepchild of their
right.
group."
Like the
Is
dark horses of the emotions, right?
yeah. And
Yeah,
then ennui and
yeah. And
ennui or boredom, whatever that's supposed to I don't
yeah,
remember the
in way,
pronunciation of that. Yeah.
un way or something like that. I don't know. I can't remember how they pronounce it, but she was hilarious.
Yeah.
I thought that character was hilarious. I thought that character really represented that tween demographic that you're talking about too. I mean, that's like
Mhm.
every tween, every mid teenager is just like on their phone. They don't care about what anybody else is talking about. They're just bored with whatever's happening, unless it's something that they want to do. Like, I thought that was a really encapsulated kind of like the society of, of that age
Mhm.
group.
Mhm.
I thought that was a,
Exactly.
I thought that was a good addition as well. You know, I mean, for me, the pro and this really sucks to say, but there was no standout scene in this movie for me. That's what's killing me about this film is that
Mhm.
I just wish there was like even in the first movie when they show the core memories and they'll have the flashbacks to when those core memories were created, like those were emotional. They really spent time on those with the song, with the score, and like connecting the parents' relationship to Riley, and then when she runs away, like I really connected to that scene when she gets on the bus and she's scared out of her mind. And but in this movie, it was just all like bam, 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 bam. And I mean, I think maybe it was supposed to be like that because anxiety is kind of running the show, so it was a
Mhm.
very anxious watch for me, which
Yeah.
proves the point that anxiety was kind of directing the bulk of the movie. But I just didn't have any scenes that really like I walked away with like I did in the first film or in a lot of other Pixar films. I thought this was more just like a fun sequel with great voice acting and great characters that we've become familiar with and a couple really cool characters that were introduced. But you saw by the way, you saw this as like the number one box office of the year now, Inside Out 2. It passed Dune 2 this past week.
Yeah,
So
I heard that. What did you
yeah.
think about the anxiety attack sequence and how that was kind of
That was the one in the bathroom, right? When she went to the bathroom. Is that what you're talking about?
well, there's at the very end when she's in the hockey, she's in the timeout and
Oh yeah,
Maya
yeah,
Hawke
and
kind of
she's
gets
yeah, yeah,
stuck in like a kind of like a vibratory
yeah,
motion.
yeah. I've never, I personally have never really had a panic attack or an anxiety attack, so I don't know about the authenticity of the way that was um, represented. But I will say that it came across as to what she was going through, and I could kind of feel, I felt bad for that character. But also, I think sometimes we let our anxiety and our want to succeed or to reach whatever goal we're trying to accomplish kind of take over. So which is also what happens to her in that particular scene. So I was able to connect to it on that level. What about you? Did you think that was well done there?
Well, it's interesting that as you're talking about the character, and I'm assuming when you say the character, you mean Riley.
Right, Riley. Yeah.
So for me, I was more thinking about the anxiety character and how it was
Hmm.
portrayed for her because as Riley is having this panic attack, anxiety is kind of also having its own anxiety attack where she's
Hmm.
been trying to like press so many buttons and make so many things happen and juggle so many different tasks that she herself is having a panic attack. So I think in a way this is one of the main flaws of the movie is that I feel like I felt more of an emotional attachment towards the emotions, the
Hmm.
anthropomorphized emotions
Oh wow.
than the humans in the movie. And
Yeah.
so maybe that's kind of the overall flaw of the movie is that you're trying to I feel like they spent more time on the emotions too than they did on the humans. And so we're sort of, I do wonder, number one, if they had spent more time on the humans, because they sort of left the parents in the dust too, although
Hmm.
that's part of the teen experience is you rely more on your friends.
Hmm.
But then one of the descriptions that I read of the movie, which was kind of funny, is they only mentioned anxiety. They said that anxiety comes to into the fold and adds to the chaos. And I did kind of wonder, well, I wonder what if the movie would have been stronger if they had just added one character instead
Hmm.
of trying to add so many emotions, especially if they wanted the main point to be about anxiety. Some maybe adding so many characters um in a way took away from that, even though that added more to the humor or the potential of making jokes.
Right. Yeah, I think in the first movie too, everything that these emotions are doing are in service of Riley. But when I say that, I mean like on screen. Like we get a pretty equal display of Riley as a kid growing up and her home life with her folks. And I mentioned the scene where she runs away, and they really spend a lot more time too on the core memory stuff in the first movie. So in this film, you're right. That it was like Riley was almost like a supporting character, but this is all happening in her head. So
Mhm.
I but I also think maybe they're like, well, everybody knows Riley. They saw the first movie. They're already connected to her. We don't need to do that all over again. I mean, I don't know if that's what they're kind of were thinking when they did this sequel, but I'm with you where it just felt like everything we loved about the first movie when we're talking about the emotions part, everything we loved about the first movie and the dynamic between those emotions in her head, but then here's five or four or five new ones. It's like,
Mhm.
and I get that anxiety is kind of running the show, like I said before. So I don't know if I'm supposed to feel that way, but I guess I'm saying regardless, it just wasn't as enjoyable of an experience for me. Well, I mean, with that being said, I didn't hate it. I think you should take your kids to see it. I think you should see it, but I didn't like it near. I gave the first one a 10 out of 10. I think the first one is a perfect original Pixar in its prime, making people cry, making people question their existence. Like, I mean, what they've kind of been known to do as of late. This one was more just kind of like a fun sequel with some characters that you're going to, recognize, and you can have a good time with it, but it's not going to hit you emotionally. At least it didn't me.
Mhm.
Uh, I've seen some people that it did hit emotionally. I think that's great. That's why I said people that may have a closer connection to what the emotions or Riley are going through might take more away from it. But for me, it was just a fun Sunday at the movies, but nothing really more than that.
Yeah.
Anything we have not discussed yet that you want to talk about as we wrap up here?
Um, did you hear anything about why, like, Bill Hader and Mindy Kaling didn't come back? And I haven't heard anything, but I wondered because Fear was played by Bill Hader, and it was
Oh
now
yeah.
Tony Hale, and Mindy Kaling was discussed in the first movie, and it was now voiced by Liza LaPiera. So those two people were
Oh,
replaced. So I
you know
wasn't sure
what?
if
I didn't
you.
even. I don't know, but you know what? I didn't even think about that because I love Bill Hader. I wonder if it may have been scheduling or something like that. But I have not. They definitely didn't make it super public because I didn't even know until you just told me. I didn't
Mhm.
realize it until you just told me. But yeah, I have no idea why that happened.
Mhm. And
Like I said though, I did love. I thought the voice cast, meshed really well together here. Um,
mhm.
I thought Maya Hawke was probably the standout for me. I mean, as anxiety. Amy Poehler's just, I mean, she's absolute divine queen, so she nailed it as usual. But yeah, I thought it was all around from a voice acting perspective. It was great.
Yeah, but you're right. You talked about do you want an adult Inside Out too? And I'm like, well, then what's gonna be the what's gonna be the growth? The growth in that won't make it super angsty and um I don't know that obviously Up is a Pixar movie, but there's already been a movie, a really good movie made about like the senior citizen experience.
Sure, yeah.
So you don't need to,
Yeah, and if you
yeah, how
get
much
into
farther can.
like, yeah, I was gonna say, and if you get into like college age or even 20s or 30s or whatever, I mean, you're gonna have to talk about sex. You're gonna have to talk about, drugs and alcohol. Or you're gonna talk, I mean, it's like not a Pixar. It's not really stuff
Mhm.
that I don't think people want to take their kids to, you know, see what's going through Riley's mind at a frat party when she's in college. You know what I mean? Let's put it that way. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, it
Yeah.
would be interesting, but I don't need it. All right, well, there you go. So Inside Out 2 is, I guess, a mild recommend from us, right, Lindsay? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah,
Mild
it's
recommend.
okay. It's okay.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a
good.
good,
It's fine.
but there's a lot of movies out right now.
I know.
So
Yeah, it's fine. I think the reason this is making so much money is because it's summertime and everybody's taking their kids to see a movie. And this is the one. If you have young kids, this is the one that they're going to want to go see. Which I think is great, to be honest. I mean, God knows the box office needed it after a couple of bad showings, and I know Bad Boys Ride or Die's been doing really well right now too. So I hope it continues for the sake of the theaters and cinema and that kind of thing. But this is going to be on Disney Plus in a few months. If your kids are willing to wait, you could probably wait. I do think it's a
mhm.
good movie. I do think you should, especially as like a double feature. I think it would be cool with the first movie. But Inside Out 2, it got a 7 from me out of 10 and a 5 out of 10 from Miss Lindsay Dunn, my gracious guest this week. Thank you so much for joining me. Lindsay, why don't you tell all the Peas listeners where they can find you and one of my stories, whatever you want to point them to there.
Mhm. You can find me at oneofmystories.com, the number one of mystories.com, and X and Instagram
You called
at
it
one
X.
of,
It's Twitter.
yeah.
Can't believe you.
I'm trying to be like, I just got a new computer and I actually tried to Google Twitter and it put me to
Oh boy.
Twitch. So I think
Ah.
it's starting to redirect
Oh boy.
away from allowing the use of Twitter. So yeah, so you can find me on those things if you want to hear me talking about movies, or if you want to hear me singing,
Yes.
you can go to Spotify and go to Lindsay Dunn or Introvoid and hear my our 3 demos. So
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. I'm proud of you. Congratulations for that. I saw you posted that online a few weeks ago, and that's great. Check out Lindsay. I will have producer Dan put everything in the show notes for you guys as well, so you can look her up. One of my stories has a killer logo on the podcast. Really good logo. Yeah,
It's
I
made
think it
by
looks good.
somebody kind of cool.
Yeah, I think it looks good. Lindsay, I love you. You know that. You're a delight, and it's always great to get to talk movies with you. Hopefully, I'll see you at some screenings in the near future. But thanks so much for coming by the pod to talk about Inside Out 2. I really appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me, Gerald.
Absolutely. Next week, what the hell am I doing next week? Next week, we're going to be talking about A Quiet Place, day one. Now,
Mm.
the first two movies were like top tier. They were my top five movies of their respective years. I love this franchise. I'm excited for this one. So I got my boy Imran from the Jock and Nerd podcast is going to be guesting with me next week, and we're going to talk about A Quiet Place day one. I'll see everybody then. Lindsay, once again, thanks for being here, and thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next week. We are out.
Bye.